Dr. Marcus Chen stumbled through the automatic doors of Xenobiology Medical Bay 7, his third cup of synthetic coffee growing cold in his trembling hands. The emergency beacon had dragged him from his first sleep in 48 hours, and the exhaustion weighed on his shoulders like lead armor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the sterile white corridors that had become his second home aboard the research station Harmony. The call had been urgent, but vague. Something about an injured alien juvenile, species unknown, found drifting in an escape pod near the Kepler Nebula. Marcus had seen plenty of strange creatures during his 15 years as a xenobiologist, but the tremor in Nurse Patterson's voice suggested this case was different. She had whispered something about crying, which seemed impossible. Most alien species they encountered communicated through pheromones, electromagnetic pulses, or complex color patterns. As he approached the examination room, Marcus heard it. A sound that made his blood run cold and his heart race simultaneously. It was unmistakably the sound of sobbing, but unlike anything he had ever heard, the cries carried a haunting melody, rising and falling like a mournful song that seemed to pierce straight through to his soul. Each sob contained layers of emotion so pure and raw that Marcus found himself blinking back tears of his own. He pressed his palm against the door scanner, and the metal barrier slid open with a soft hiss. The sight that greeted him defied every scientific principle he thought he understood about alien biology. Curled up in the center of the examination table was a creature no larger than a house cat, but its form was unmistakably draconic. Iridescent scales covered its serpentine body, shifting from deep emerald to brilliant sapphire as the creature breathed. Delicate, translucent wings lay folded against its back, and a long, graceful tail wrapped around its small form like a security blanket. But it was the creature's face that stopped Marcus in his tracks. Large, expressive eyes the color of liquid amber gazed up at him, brimming with tears that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The dragonling's small chest heaved with each sob, and its tiny clawed hands pressed against its throat as if trying to contain the sounds that poured forth. There was an intelligence in those eyes that spoke of self-awareness, of understanding, of a consciousness that recognized its own predicament. Nurse Patterson stood nearby, her usually composed demeanor cracked with obvious distress. She had been working with alien species for nearly as long as Marcus, but her hands shook as she monitored the creature's vital signs on the holographic display above the table. The readings were erratic, showing stress levels that bordered on dangerous. "Doctor, I've never seen anything like this," she whispered, afraid to speak louder, and further distress the small being. "The creature has been crying non-stop since we brought it in 3 hours ago. Its body temperature keeps fluctuating and its neural activity is off the charts. Whatever happened to it, the trauma runs deep." Marcus approached slowly, his exhaustion forgotten in the face of this unprecedented discovery. The dragonling tracked his movement with those remarkable eyes, and for a moment, the sobbing quieted to soft whimpers. There was something almost human in the way it looked at him, a desperate plea for help that transcended species barriers. "Have you been able to determine the extent of its injuries?" Marcus asked, pulling up the detailed scans on his tablet. The X-ray images revealed a skeletal structure that was surprisingly similar to Earth's flying reptiles, but with obvious modifications for intelligence. The creature's brain was proportionally large, with complex neural pathways that suggested advanced cognitive abilities. Physically, "It's in remarkable condition considering it was found floating in space," Patterson replied. "Minor dehydration, some superficial cuts and bruises, but nothing that explains this level of distress. The psychological trauma appears to be the primary concern." As if understanding their conversation, the dragonling's cries intensified. It struggled to sit up, its small wings fluttering weakly as it pressed both hands against its throat. The gesture was so unmistakably human that Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The creature was trying to speak, trying to communicate, but something was preventing it from forming words. Marcus knelt down beside the examination table, bringing himself to eye level with the small being. "Hey there, little one," he said softly, using the same gentle tone he reserved for frightened children. "My name is Marcus. I'm here to help you." The dragonling's ears, small and pointed like a cat's, perked up at the sound of his voice. Its crying subsided to hiccuping sobs as it studied his face intently. Then slowly and deliberately it pointed to its own throat and shook its head. The message was clear. Something was wrong with its ability to speak. "Patterson, Bring me the neural interface scanner, Marcus said, his mind already racing with possibilities. I want to see what's happening in its speech centers. As the nurse prepared the equipment, Marcus continued to observe the remarkable creature before him. The dragonling had stopped crying and was now watching his every move with intense curiosity. When he reached out slowly with his hand palm up, the creature hesitated for only a moment before placing one tiny, scaled hand against his palm. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through Marcus, not painful but startling in its intensity. In that moment of contact, images flashed through his mind. Brief fragmented pictures of a burning city, of larger dragons falling from the sky, of this small creature being thrust into an escape pod by desperate hands. The visions lasted only seconds, but they left Marcus gasping and staring at the dragonling with new understanding. This wasn't just any alien creature. This was a survivor of something terrible, and somehow it had the ability to share its memories through touch. But more importantly, Marcus realized with growing excitement, if it could project thoughts, then perhaps there was a way to help it find its voice again. Marcus spent the next several hours running every diagnostic test available in the medical bay's extensive arsenal. The neural interface scanner revealed something extraordinary about the dragonling's brain structure. While the basic layout resembled that of other intelligent species they had encountered, there were unique formations in the regions typically associated with communication and telepathy. Complex crystalline structures, almost like organic circuits, were embedded throughout the creature's nervous system. These formations are unlike anything in our databases, Marcus muttered, studying the three-dimensional brain map floating above his workstation. The dragonling had remained remarkably patient throughout the scanning process, seeming to understand that the humans were trying to help. It had even managed to stop crying, though its large amber eyes still glistened with unshed tears. Nurse. Patterson leaned over his shoulder, squinting at the scan results. Those crystalline structures almost look artificial, don't they? Like some kind of bioengineered enhancement. Or perhaps they're natural evolutionary adaptations for telepathic communication, Marcus replied thoughtfully. Many species develop specialized organs for their primary communication methods, but look at this area here. He pointed to a cluster of darkened regions near what would be the creature's speech centers. These neural pathways appear to be severely damaged or blocked. The dragonling, who had been quietly observing their conversation, from its perch on the examination table suddenly became agitated. It began pointing frantically at the holographic display, then at its own throat, making urgent chittering sounds that were clearly attempts at speech. The frustration in its movements was heartbreaking to witness. It understands what we're saying, Patterson observed with amazement. Not just the tone, but the actual words. Its language comprehension appears to be intact. Marcus turned to face the small creature directly. Can you understand me when I speak? He asked slowly and clearly. The dragonling nodded vigorously, then pointed to its mouth and made an exaggerated frowning expression. It pressed both hands against its throat and shook its head sadly. You can understand us, but you can't speak back, Marcus interpreted. The creature nodded again, its eyes filling with fresh tears. Don't worry, little one. We're going to figure this out. Over the following days, Marcus threw himself into research with an intensity that worried his colleagues. He barely slept, surviving on stimulants and the occasional nutrient bar as he dove deep into every database and research archive available to the station. The dragonling, whom he had begun calling Echo due to its attempts to mimic human speech sounds, had become his constant companion. Echo proved to be remarkably intelligent and curious about everything in the medical bay. It would carefully observe Marcus's work, sometimes even attempting to help by pointing out patterns in the data that the exhausted doctor had missed. The creature's memory for detail was extraordinary, and it seemed to have an intuitive understanding of the diagnostic equipment that impressed even the seasoned medical staff. During their third day together, Marcus made a breakthrough. While reviewing historical records of first contact protocols, he discovered references to a species called the Zephyrians, who possessed similar crystalline neural structures. The reports were centuries old from the early days of galactic exploration, but they described a highly advanced civilization known for their telepathic abilities and their role as galactic mediators. According to the ancient texts, Zephyrians could not only communicate telepathically, but could also learn and speak any language after minimal exposure. They were described as beings of great wisdom and compassion, often called upon to resolve conflicts between species. The reports also mentioned their distinctive draconic appearance and their ability to share memories through touch. Echo, Marcus called softly, looking up from his research terminal. The dragonling immediately turned its attention to him, head tilted in that endearingly curious way. "I think I know what you are. You're a Zephyrian, aren't you?" The reaction was immediate and profound. Echo's eyes widened with recognition and hope, and it began nodding so enthusiastically that Marcus worried it might hurt itself. The creature scrambled across the table and pressed both its small hands against Marcus's arm. Once again, images flooded his mind. This time, the visions were clearer and more detailed. Marcus saw a beautiful world with crystal cities that seemed to grow from the very mountains themselves. He watched as graceful dragons soared through skies filled with floating platforms and energy bridges. He witnessed a society built on harmony and understanding, where conflicts were resolved through shared experience rather than violence. But then the images turned dark. Ships descended from space, weapons firing indiscriminately at the peaceful cities below. The crystal structures shattered like glass, and the sky filled with smoke and falling debris. Marcus felt Echo's terror, as larger Zephyrians fought desperately to defend their world, many falling to strange energy weapons that seemed to target their neural systems specifically. The final images showed Echo being placed in an escape pod by what could only be its parents. Their mental voices echoed through the shared memory, speaking words in a language Marcus couldn't understand, but whose meaning was crystal clear. Survive. Remember us. Find others who can help. When the connection broke, both Marcus and Echo were breathing heavily. The doctor stared at the small creature with new understanding and profound sadness. "Your world was attacked. Your people were slaughtered because of their telepathic abilities." Echo nodded sadly, fresh tears streaming down its scaled cheeks. It pointed to its throat again, then made a slashing motion across its neck. The implication was clear. Whatever had happened to its homeworld had also damaged its ability to communicate. The weapons must have been designed to target Zephyrian neural structures, Marcus realized aloud. They didn't just want to kill your people. They wanted to silence them permanently. But you survived, and I'm going to help you find your voice again. For the first time since their initial meeting, Echo's expression brightened with genuine hope. It reached out and gently touched Marcus's hand, and this time the shared sensation was warm and comforting rather than overwhelming. The small creature was beginning to trust him completely, and Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders. Marcus's research into Zephyrian biology consumed every waking moment of the following week. The station's vast archives contained fragmentary information about the species, most of it based on second-hand accounts and ancient diplomatic records. What he discovered painted a picture of a remarkable civilization that had served as peacekeepers and translators for the galaxy's younger species for millennia. The Zephyrians possessed a unique gift that went beyond simple telepathy. They could form what the records called neural bridges with other intelligent beings, allowing for perfect translation and understanding between species. This ability had made them invaluable as mediators in interspecies conflicts, but it had also made them targets for those who preferred to rule through fear and misunderstanding. Echo had taken up residence in Marcus's quarters. Much to the amusement of the station's crew, the small dragonling followed him everywhere, perching on his shoulder during research sessions and curling up on his desk while he worked late into the night. Despite its inability to speak, Echo found creative ways to communicate its thoughts and feelings through gestures, expressions, and the occasional shared memory. The creature proved to be an excellent judge of character, showing immediate affection for kind-hearted crew members, while maintaining a cautious distance from those with less noble intentions. It had a particular fondness for Chief Engineer Rodriguez, who had fashioned a small heating pad for Echo's sleeping area, and for Lieutenant Sarah Chen from the Communications Department, who spent hours teaching the dragonling about human writing systems. "Doctor, you need to see this," Sarah called from her workstation in the communications bay. Marcus hurried over, Echo riding on his shoulder as had become their custom. On the screen before them was a complex pattern of symbols and mathematical equations that seemed to pulse with their own inner rhythm. Echo created this, Sarah explained, her voice filled with excitement.
I was showing it how our universal translator works and it started manipulating the interface.
These symbols aren't in any database we have, but the mathematical relationships are incredibly sophisticated. Marcus studied the display with growing amazement. The symbols were beautiful, flowing script that seemed to dance across the screen like living things. But more than their aesthetic appeal, there was something familiar about their structure that tugged at his memory. Echo chittered softly and pointed at the screen, then at its throat. It made a series of gestures that Marcus had learned meant speak or voice, then touched the symbols again with obvious reverence. "This is your written language, isn't it?" Marcus asked. Echo nodded enthusiastically. "And these mathematical formulas, they're instructions for neural pattern reconstruction." The implications hit him like a physical blow. The Zephyrians hadn't just been telepaths, they had been masters of neural engineering. The symbols on the screen weren't just writing. They were a technical manual for repairing damaged telepathic abilities. Echo hadn't just survived the attack on its world. It had carried with it the knowledge needed for its own healing. Over the next several days, Marcus worked with Echo and Sarah to decode the Zephyrian text. The process was painstakingly slow, as Echo could only communicate through touch-based memory sharing, which left both the Dragonling and Marcus exhausted after each session. But gradually a picture emerged of incredibly advanced neuroscience that made human understanding look primitive by comparison. The Zephyrians had long ago learned to repair and enhance their neural structures using a combination of crystalline technology and bioengineered organisms. The process required precise manipulation of quantum-level brain chemistry, something far beyond current human capabilities. But Echo's desperate desire to communicate drove both it and Marcus to push the boundaries of what seemed possible. "We don't have the technology to replicate their methods exactly," Marcus admitted during one particularly frustrating research session. "But perhaps we can adapt our own neural interface technology to work with your natural abilities." Echo tilted its head thoughtfully, then scrambled over to Marcus's research terminal. Using its small claws to manipulate the holographic interface, it began pulling up displays of the station's medical equipment. Its movements were swift and precise, showing an understanding of human technology that shouldn't have been possible for a creature from a completely different civilization. The Dragonling paused at a display showing the station's experimental neural stimulation array, a device used for treating severe brain trauma in humans. Echo pointed at the machine, then at itself, then made a series of complex gestures that took Marcus several minutes to interpret. "You think we can modify our equipment to work with your neural structure?" he asked. Echo nodded vigorously, then began manipulating the display to show modifications to the device's programming. The changes it suggested were brilliant in their simplicity, adapting human technology to work with Zephyrian biology in ways that Marcus never would have considered. But the procedure would be dangerous. The neural stimulation array was powerful enough to restore damaged human brain tissue, but it could just as easily cause irreversible damage if used incorrectly. And they would be working with an alien nervous system that, despite their research, they still didn't fully understand. "Echo, this could kill you," Marcus said quietly, his exhaustion making him more blunt than usual. "We don't know enough about your biology to guarantee success." The small Dragonling looked at him with those remarkable amber eyes, and for a moment Marcus saw the full weight of its loneliness and desperation. Echo had been the sole survivor of its species' genocide, carrying not just the burden of memory but the responsibility of preserving Zephyrian knowledge for future generations. The ability to communicate wasn't just about personal comfort. It was about ensuring that its people's wisdom wouldn't die with it. Echo reached out and gently touched Marcus's hand. The shared sensation that followed wasn't a memory this time, but a feeling of profound trust and gratitude. The Dragonling understood the risks, but it also understood that this might be its only chance to fulfill the promise it had made to its dying world. "All right," Marcus said softly, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. "We'll try, but we're going to take every precaution possible. I won't lose you, Echo, I promise." The small creature's face brightened with the first genuine smile Marcus had seen since their initial meeting. Echo pressed both hands to its heart, then to Marcus's, a gesture that needed no translation. They were in this together, two beings from different worlds united by the simple desire to bridge the gap between species and prove that understanding could triumph over fear. The preparation for Echo's procedure took 3 intense weeks of careful planning and equipment modification. Marcus assembled a team of the station's best specialists, including Dr. Elena Vasquez, the chief neurosurgeon and engineer Rodriguez, whose expertise in quantum electronics proved invaluable for adapting the neural stimulation array to work with Zephyrian biology. Echo participated in every aspect of the planning, its remarkable intelligence allowing it to understand and contribute to discussions that would have challenged graduate students. The Dragonling had learned to write basic human script, using its small claws to scratch out notes and diagrams that complemented the information it shared through memory transfer. Its dedication to the project was both inspiring and heartbreaking, as everyone could see how desperately it wanted to speak again. The modifications are complete, Rodriguez announced during their final planning session. The neural stimulation array now bristled with additional components, quantum resonance chambers that Echo had designed to interface with its crystalline neural structures. But I have to be honest, Dr. Chen. This is the most complex modification we've ever attempted. We're essentially creating a hybrid of human and Zephyrian technology. The risk assessment shows a 60% chance of success, Dr. Vasquez added, her expression grave. But there's also a 20% chance of severe neural damage and a 20% chance of, well, we need to be prepared for the possibility that Echo might not survive the procedure. Marcus looked down at the small dragonling perched on his arm. Echo had been listening to the conversation with intense concentration, its amber eyes moving from speaker to speaker as it followed every word. When it realized everyone was looking at it, Echo straightened its small shoulders and nodded firmly. It understood the risks, but its determination remained unshaken. Echo wants to proceed, Marcus said quietly, and after everything it's been through, I think we owe it the chance to try. The procedure was scheduled for the following morning, giving everyone time to make final preparations and adjustments. That evening, Marcus sat in his quarters with Echo curled up beside him, watching the stars through the large observation window. The dragonling seemed unusually quiet, its usual curiosity replaced by a contemplative mood. "Are you scared?" Marcus asked softly. Echo looked up at him and nodded honestly, then pointed to Marcus and raised its small eyebrows in a questioning expression. "Am I scared too?" "Yes, I am. But sometimes being brave means doing the right thing even when you're terrified." Echo reached out and touched his hand gently. The sensation that followed wasn't a memory this time, but something more abstract. Marcus felt a warm feeling of gratitude and affection, tinged with a deep sadness for everything Echo had lost. But underneath it all was a spark of hope, bright and determined, that reminded Marcus why they were taking this risk. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that meeting you has changed my life," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've shown me that intelligence and compassion can exist in forms I never imagined. Your people may be gone, but their spirit lives on in you." Echo's eyes filled with tears, but this time they seemed to be tears of gratitude rather than sorrow. The small creature curled up against Marcus's arm and fell asleep, its breathing slow and peaceful despite the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring. The next morning, the medical bay was filled with more activity than it had seen in months. Every department head was present, along with several researchers who had requested permission to observe the unprecedented procedure. Echo handled the attention with remarkable dignity, allowing itself to be examined and connected to monitoring equipment without complaint. The modified neural stimulation array hummed with barely contained energy, its quantum resonance chambers glowing with an ethereal blue light that seemed to respond to Echo's presence. As the dragonling was carefully positioned within the device, Marcus noticed that the crystalline structures in its nervous system began to emit a faint luminescence, as if recognizing the technology that would soon attempt to heal them. "All systems are ready," Dr. Vasquez announced from her position at the main control console. "Neural pathways are mapped and targeted. The quantum resonance chambers are calibrated to Echo's specific neural frequency." Marcus took his place at Echo's side, where he could monitor the dragonling's vital signs and provide comfort during the procedure. Echo looked up at him one last time, its amber eyes bright with trust and determination. It reached out with one small hand and touched his fingers gently, sharing a final moment of connection before the procedure began. Initiating neural stimulation in 3, 2, 1. The array activated with a sound like distant thunder, and immediately Echo's body went rigid as quantum energy coursed through its nervous system. The monitoring displays erupted with data, as the dragonling's brain activity spiked to levels that would have been fatal in most species. The crystalline structures throughout its nervous system blazed with brilliant light, creating patterns of energy that pulsed in rhythm with its heartbeat. For several terrifying minutes, Echo's vital signs fluctuated wildly as the quantum energy worked to rebuild damaged neural pathways. Marcus watched helplessly as the small creature's body convulsed, its delicate features twisted in what appeared to be pain. Every instinct screamed at him to stop the procedure, but he forced himself to trust in Echo's determination and their careful preparations. Then, gradually, the chaos began to settle into patterns. The wild fluctuations in Echo's brain activity organized themselves into complex but stable rhythms. The crystalline structures in its nervous system pulsed with steady, synchronized light. The monitoring displays showed neural pathways reconnecting and strengthening, damaged tissue regenerating at an incredible rate. "It's working," Dr. Vasquez breathed, her voice filled with amazement. "The neural reconstruction is proceeding better than our most optimistic projections. Echo's nervous system is actually guiding the repair process, using the quantum energy like a tool." As the procedure neared completion, Echo's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, the dragonling looked confused and disoriented, its gaze unfocused as its brain adjusted to its newly repaired state. Then its eyes found Marcus, and for the first time since they had met, Echo opened its mouth and spoke. "Marcus," it said, its voice soft and melodious, carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate directly with his soul. "Thank you for giving me back my voice." The medical bay fell completely silent as Echo's words hung in the air like a benediction. The small dragonling's voice carried an otherworldly quality, each syllable seeming to resonate with harmonics that touched something deep within every person present. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face as he stared at the remarkable creature he had come to love like a child. "Echo," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "You can speak." "Yes," Echo replied, its voice growing stronger and more confident with each word. "The neural pathways have been restored. I can feel the connections rebuilding themselves, stronger than they were before. Your technology and my people's knowledge have created something new, something better." The dragonling sat up slowly, testing its restored abilities with obvious wonder. When it spoke again, its voice carried subtle changes in tone and pitch that conveyed layers of meaning beyond the simple words. Marcus realized he was witnessing the first successful integration of human and Zephyrian neural technology, a breakthrough that would revolutionize their understanding of consciousness and communication. Dr. Vasquez approached cautiously, her scanner reading neural activity that defied every parameter they had established for intelligent life. "Echo, how do you feel? Are you experiencing any discomfort or disorientation?" "I feel whole," Echo replied thoughtfully. "For the first time since the attack on my world, I feel complete. But there is something else, something unexpected." The dragonling looked directly at Marcus, its amber eyes bright with excitement. "I can sense your thoughts not just when we touch. The neural bridge that once connected me only to other Zephyrians has expanded. I can feel the emotional resonance of everyone in this room." The implications of Echo's words sent a shiver of anticipation through the assembled researchers. If the procedure had not only restored the dragonling's ability to speak, but had also enhanced its telepathic abilities, they were looking at a development that could change interspecies relations forever. "Can you control this new ability?" Marcus asked, concerned about the potential for overwhelming sensory input. "Yes, it feels natural, like learning to focus your eyes," Echo explained. "I can choose to listen to the emotional undercurrents around me, or I can close myself off and speak only with words. But Marcus, there is something more important we need to discuss." The dragonling's expression grew serious, and its voice took on a tone of urgent authority that seemed to belie its small size. "During the procedure, when my neural pathways were rebuilding themselves, I accessed memory engrams that had been buried too deeply for me to reach before. I remember more about the attack on my world, And about the enemy that destroyed my people. Echo paused, and everyone in the room leaned forward unconsciously, sensing that they were about to hear something of galactic importance. The beings who attacked us called themselves the Silence. Echo continued. They are an ancient species that feeds on communication itself, growing stronger by destroying the ability of other races to understand each other. They have been moving through this galaxy for millennia, targeting species like mine that serve as bridges between different civilizations. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. They're still out there? Yes, and they are coming this way, Echo said gravely. My people's destruction was just one step in a larger plan. The Silence seeks to isolate every intelligent species, to create a galaxy where fear and misunderstanding reign supreme. They believe that in such a galaxy, they will be the only power that matters. The weight of this revelation settled on everyone present like a physical burden. They had succeeded in restoring Echo's voice, but in doing so, they had also learned of a threat that could endanger every peaceful species in the galaxy. But there is hope, Echo continued, its voice brightening with determination. The neural bridge technology we have created here, the fusion of human innovation and Zephyrian knowledge, may be the key to stopping them. If we can establish communication networks between species that the Silence cannot destroy, we can unite the galaxy against them. Engineer Rodriguez stepped forward, his mind already racing with possibilities. You're talking about creating a galactic communication system based on quantum neural resonance. The technical challenges would be enormous, but if we could link species together through technology instead of relying solely on natural telepathy. Exactly, Echo said, excitement evident in its melodious voice. The Silence can destroy biological neural structures, but they have never encountered technology like what we created here. Human engineering combined with Zephyrian understanding of consciousness could create something they cannot touch. Marcus looked around the room at his colleagues, seeing the same mixture of fear and determination in their faces that he felt in his own heart. They had set out to help one small creature find its voice, but they had stumbled upon something far greater. They had discovered a way to give voice to the entire galaxy. What do you need from us? He asked Echo. The Dragonling's face lit up with gratitude and hope. I need you to help me contact the surviving fragments of other species that the Silence has attacked. There are others like me scattered across the galaxy, refugees carrying pieces of their people's knowledge. If we can find them and connect them through this new technology, we can begin to rebuild what the Silence has tried to destroy. And how do we find these survivors? Dr. Vasquez asked. Echo's expression grew thoughtful. Each species that possessed advanced communication abilities left behind what my people called echo signatures, quantum resonance patterns that persist even after their civilizations are gone. With the right modifications to your scanning arrays, we should be able to detect these signatures and locate the survivors. The small dragonling looked around the room at the faces of the humans who had given it back its voice, its amber eyes shining with hope for the first time since its world had burned. You have already done the impossible by restoring my voice, Echo said softly. Now together we can give voice to all the lost children of the galaxy. We can build a network of understanding that will ensure the Silence never again succeeds in dividing us. Will you help me? Marcus reached out and gently touched Echo's small hand, feeling the familiar warmth of their connection but also something new, a sense of shared purpose that extended far beyond the walls of the medical bay. Of course we will, he said simply. After all, that's what humans do best. We find ways to help others find their voice. Within days of Echo's successful procedure, the research station Harmony transformed into the unlikely headquarters of what would become known as the Galactic Voice Project. Word of the breakthrough spread rapidly through human space, drawing scientists, engineers, and linguists from every corner of human civilization. The station's corridors buzzed with activity as new equipment arrived daily, and temporary laboratories were established in every available space. Echo had become something of a celebrity, but the young Zephyrian handled the attention with remarkable grace. It spent its days working closely with the research teams, its restored voice proving invaluable as it shared knowledge that had been locked away for generations. The Dragonling's ability to understand and adapt to new concepts astounded even the most experienced xenobiologists. The first echo signature has been detected, Lieutenant Chen announced from her position at the newly modified scanning array. The equipment now hummed with quantum resonance technology that Echo had helped design, creating a hybrid system that could detect the unique energy patterns left behind by extinct telepathic civilizations. Marcus hurried over to the display. Echo perched on his shoulder as had become their habit. The scanner showed a faint but unmistakable signal emanating from a system 3 sectors away, pulsing with the characteristic rhythm of intelligent consciousness. "It's weak, but it's definitely there," Chen continued. "The pattern matches the theoretical profiles Echo helped us develop for species with advanced communication abilities. That region was attacked by an unknown force approximately 30 years ago," Echo said softly, its voice carrying undertones of sadness. "I can feel the resonance of loss, but also something else, something alive." The decision to investigate was unanimous, but it required careful planning. The station's fastest scout ship was equipped with portable versions of their new communication technology, and a small team was assembled for what could be a dangerous mission. Marcus insisted on leading the expedition, with Echo as their primary specialist in interspecies communication. The journey to the distant system took 5 days, during which Echo worked tirelessly to refine their detection equipment and prepare protocols for first contact with potentially traumatized survivors. The Dragonling's own experiences had taught it much about the psychological damage caused by the Silence's attacks, and it was determined to approach any survivors with the utmost care and compassion. As they approached the target system, the devastation became apparent. The planets showed signs of massive bombardment, their surfaces scarred by weapons that seemed designed to target population centers and communication infrastructure. But their scanners continued to detect the faint Echo signature, stronger now as they drew closer to its source. "There," Echo said suddenly, pointing through the ship's viewport toward a small moon orbiting a gas giant. "The signal is coming from that moon. I can feel hope. Desperate, fragile hope." The moon's surface appeared barren from orbit, but detailed scans revealed an extensive underground complex carved deep into the rocky core. The architecture was unlike anything in human databases, featuring flowing organic curves that seemed to pulse with their own inner rhythm. "Life signs detected," reported Pilot Johnson from the cockpit. "Multiple species, but the readings are strange. It's like they're all connected somehow." Echo's eyes widened with understanding. "It's a sanctuary. The survivors of multiple species have gathered together, pooling their remaining telepathic abilities to stay hidden from the Silence. But they're dying slowly, cut off from the neural networks that once sustained their civilizations." The landing was tense, with everyone aware that they were approaching beings who had survived unspeakable trauma and might view any newcomers as potential threats. Echo insisted on being the first to exit the ship, believing that its Zephyrian nature might provide some reassurance to the survivors. The underground complex was breathtaking in its beauty and heartbreaking in its desperation. Crystalline formations similar to those found in Zephyrian architecture grew from the walls, but they were dim and flickering, showing signs of decay. As the team made their way through the tunnels, they began to encounter the survivors. They were a diverse group representing at least a dozen different species, all showing the telltale signs of neural damage caused by the Silence's weapons. Some moved with the sluggish gait of beings whose telepathic abilities had been severed, while others bore visible scars from attempts to repair their damaged communication centers. At the heart of the complex, they found the leader of this unlikely community. She was a tall, ethereal being with features that shifted subtly as she moved, as if she existed partially in dimensions beyond normal perception. When she saw Echo, her expression transformed from suspicion to wonder. "A Zephyrian child," she whispered in a voice that seemed to come from multiple sources at once. "We thought your people were all gone." "I am Echo, last speaker for my world," the Dragonling replied formally, its voice carrying the ceremonial tones appropriate for such a meeting. "But I am no longer alone. These humans have helped me restore my voice, and together we have developed technology that can heal the wounds the Silence has inflicted." The leader's eyes widened as she processed Echo's words. "Impossible. The neural damage caused by their weapons cannot be repaired. We have tried for decades." "Not with biological methods alone," Marcus interjected, stepping forward carefully. "But by combining our technology with Zephyrian knowledge of consciousness, we've found a way to rebuild damaged neural pathways. Echo is living proof that it can be done." What followed was an intensive period of explanation and demonstration. Echo and Marcus worked together to show the survivors how human engineering could be adapted to work with various forms of telepathic biology. The portable equipment they had brought allowed them to perform preliminary scans on volunteer survivors, showing conclusively that repair was possible. The transformation in the sanctuary's atmosphere was remarkable. Beings who had lived in despair for decades suddenly dared to hope again. Different species began working together with an enthusiasm that reminded Marcus of the research teams back on Harmony. There are others, the leader told them, during a planning session several days into their visit. Scattered throughout this region of space, small groups of survivors like ourselves. Some have given up hope entirely, while others fight desperately to preserve fragments of their civilizations. If your technology can truly restore what we have lost, then we can rebuild the galactic community that the Silence tried to destroy. Echo finished, its voice ringing with determination. But it will require unprecedented cooperation between species. Humans will need to serve as bridges between civilizations while we work to restore telepathic networks. Why would humans do this for us? Asked one of the survivors, a being whose crystalline form reminded Marcus of living gemstone. What do your people gain from helping strangers? Marcus smiled, thinking of all the long hours Echo had spent perched on his shoulder, sharing its knowledge and trust so freely. Because that's what we do. Humans have always been explorers and bridge builders. We've spent our entire history learning to communicate across barriers of language, culture, and biology. Helping others find their voice isn't just what we do, it's who we are. Echo looked up at him with an expression of profound gratitude and love. And perhaps that is why the universe brought us together. The Silence seeks to divide and isolate, but humans specialize in connection and understanding. Together, we can give every survivor not just their voice back, but a chance to build something stronger than what they lost. As preparations began for expanding their mission to locate and help other survivor communities, Marcus realized that they were no longer just restoring individual voices. They were laying the foundation for a new kind of galactic civilization, one built on the principle that no voice should ever be silenced, and no being should ever face the darkness alone. 2 years after Echo's voice was restored, the galaxy bore little resemblance to the fractured collection of isolated worlds that the Silence had tried to create. The galactic voice network stretched across dozens of star systems, connecting hundreds of previously silent species through quantum neural resonance technology. What had begun as a desperate attempt to help one small dragonling had evolved into the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. Marcus stood in the command center of the newly constructed Harmony Prime Station, watching as real-time communications flowed between species that had never before been able to understand each other. The walls were lined with translation matrices that Echo had helped design, each one calibrated to convert the unique communication methods of different species into a universal format that all could comprehend. Echo itself had grown considerably during the past 2 years, though it remained small by most standards. Its scales now shimmered with a deeper, richer color that reflected its restored health and purpose. More importantly, its voice had become a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy, proof that what the Silence had tried to destroy could be rebuilt stronger than ever. Incoming priority transmission from the Andorian Commonwealth, announced Communications Officer Chen, now serving as the Director of Interspecies Communication Protocols. They're reporting first contact with a previously unknown species in the Outer Rim territories. Put them through, Marcus replied, settling into his command chair with Echo perched beside him. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the distinctive crystalline features of Commander Zara, one of the Andorian survivors they had helped restore nearly a year ago. Dr. Chen, Echo, we have remarkable news. Zara's translated thoughts flowed through the neural network with obvious excitement. The new species we encountered possesses natural immunity to the Silence's weapons. Their neural structures are based on quantum entanglement rather than biological telepathy. They've been hiding in the Outer Rim for centuries, afraid to reveal themselves. Echo's eyes brightened with interest. Commander Zara, can you establish a direct link? If they're truly immune to the Silence's attacks, they could be the key to our final victory. The next few hours brought a flurry of activity as the new species, who called themselves the Resonance, were carefully integrated into the voice network. Their unique abilities proved even more remarkable than initial reports had suggested. Not only were they immune to the Silence's neural disruption weapons, but they could actually track the enemy's movements through space by detecting the psychic voids their presence created. "The Silence is gathering," reported Resonant Prime Echo through the network, its voice carrying harmonics that spoke of vast ancient wisdom. "They have sensed the restoration of communication across the galaxy and are preparing a massive assault to destroy everything we have built." Marcus felt a chill of fear, but it was quickly overwhelmed by determination. They had known this day would come. The Silence would not allow their work to continue unopposed. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Perhaps 6 months," the Resonant replied. "They are moving carefully, gathering forces from across the galaxy. But when they come, they will bring enough power to sterilize entire star systems." Echo stood up on its perch, its small form radiating an authority that had grown along with its restored abilities. "Then we must be ready for them." The voice network was always meant to be more than just a communication system. It was designed to be a weapon against Silence itself. Over the following months, the galaxy mobilized in ways it never had before. Species that had been enemies for millennia worked side by side, sharing technology and resources in preparation for the coming conflict. The voice network became the backbone of a defensive strategy that relied not on traditional weapons, but on the power of unified consciousness. Echo worked tirelessly during this period, traveling from system to system to help coordinate the defense efforts. Its unique position as both the first restored voice and a bridge between human and alien psychology made it invaluable as a leader and organizer. Marcus often marveled at how the small creature that had once wept in despair had become the beating heart of galactic resistance. The Silence arrived exactly when the Resonance had predicted, erupting from hyperspace in a fleet of vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. Their ships were things of nightmare, designed to inspire despair and helplessness in any who saw them. But they found a galaxy that was no longer afraid. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Traditional weapons proved useless against the Silence, but the voice network had not been built for traditional warfare. Instead of firing energy beams or launching missiles, the allied species sang. It began with Echo's voice, clear and pure, broadcasting across every quantum channel of the network. One by one, other voices joined in. The crystalline harmony of the Andorians, the deep resonant chants of the Stone Singers, the ethereal whispers of the Resonance, and countless others. But underlying it all was the steady, determined rhythm of human voices, providing the backbone that held the cosmic chorus together. The song they sang was not one of destruction, but of connection and understanding. It was a hymn to consciousness itself, a celebration of the infinite diversity of thought and feeling that existed throughout the galaxy. And as it grew in power and complexity, something remarkable happened. The Silence's ships began to slow, their crews overwhelmed by the very thing they had tried to destroy. For beings that fed on isolation and despair, the unified voice of the galaxy was like poison. They had never encountered resistance that sought not to defeat them, but to include them, to offer them a place in the greater harmony of consciousness. "They're retreating," reported the Resonant Fleet Commander, wonder evident in his translated thoughts. The Silence cannot maintain coherence in the face of unified consciousness. They're scattering across the galaxy. But Echo had a different idea. "No," it said firmly, its voice carrying across the entire network. "We don't let them retreat to lick their wounds and plan another assault. We offer them something they've never had before, a choice." What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. Echo's voice reached out across space, not to the Silence's ships, but to the consciousness within them. For the first time in millennia, these beings who had chosen isolation and predation heard an offer of acceptance and understanding. Most of the Silence rejected the offer and fled to the farthest reaches of space. But some paused. A few ships broke formation and slowly approached the Allied fleet. Inside them were beings so old and isolated that they had forgotten what it meant to connect with others. But Echo's voice reminded them of possibilities they thought were lost forever. The integration of these former enemies took months of careful work, but it marked the true victory of the voice network. The galaxy had not only defended itself against the forces of silence and separation, but had offered redemption to those who had chosen darkness. Years later, as Marcus watched Echo teaching young beings from dozens of species, how to use their voices to build bridges rather than barriers. He reflected on how far they had all come. The small dragonling that had once wept in despair had not only found its own voice, but had helped an entire galaxy learn to sing together. "Do you ever regret the path that brought you here?" he asked Echo during one of their quiet moments together. The dragonling considered the question seriously before answering. "I regret the loss of my world and my people," it said softly. "But I cannot regret the journey that led to this moment. My people believed that consciousness was meant to be shared, that isolation was the greatest tragedy that could befall any thinking being. Through you and your people, I have helped ensure that no voice will ever be silenced again." Echo paused, looking out at the bustling communication center, where hundreds of species work together in harmony. "My people are gone, but their dream lives on in every voice that speaks across the network. And perhaps that is the most beautiful song of all." Marcus smiled and gently stroked Echo's scales, marveling at how a chance encounter with a crying dragonling had changed not just his life, but the fate of the galaxy itself. In helping Echo find its voice, humanity had discovered its own true calling: to be the bridge builders and voice givers, ensuring that no being would ever face the universe in silence again.